Hi, welcome. My name is Vilingor, and in today's video I wanted to talk about retro gaming, as you can guess from the thumbnail. And talking about the thumbnail of this video, it's a joke. It's clearly an exaggeration, of course. I do not think that retro games are superior to modern games, but rather I think that they are on the same level. And in a way, the thumbnail of this video is in a way to say that retro games are not inferior to modern games. And so here I will be explaining what's the reasoning behind such my point of view, because I am somebody who loves retro games, so it might be interesting just hear another point of view, a point of view of somebody who is approaching retro games from a point of love and interest and care. So why play retro games? What's the point? They are old and they are surpassed, outdated, so obsolete. So what's the point? Well, there are some advantages that retro games have over modern games. There are some ways in which retro games are not surpassed. And here I will list some reasons in favor of retro games, what is good about retro games. I will point out some arguments about that, and I will also name some cons, some downsides of retro games. So just to make a video that is equally balanced in regards to this topic. So let's first start with what is good about retro games. Well, the first thing to say is that not all retro games are good. It's a good thing, I think, to avoid, first of all, blanket statements and be specific. So there are games, in my opinion, retro games that are outdated, that are surpassed, and there is little point to playing those. But then there are others that still, I think, have a value and still are unsurpassed in some aspects. I will make examples later on of some games that still are worth playing in this day and age. So the first thing about retro video games is maybe the size of them. And this is not maybe a big pro of retro games, but it is something that it is there, that exists, and that I find comfortable. So because retro games are usually small in size, it's easy to install them, they don't take much space on the hard disk, and in an ideal situation we could say, well, why, if you don't have enough space on your PC or console, just buy another hard drive. And in an ideal world, yes, we have infinite amounts of credits, but in a real world where we live, money is not readily available in infinite quantities to everyone, so that also costs money. And so that's one advantage of retro games. It's small size, easy to install, easy to store if you wanna store your games for later. That's also easy to do with a game that's only a few gigabytes big. So that's one advantage of retro games. Then they run better. That's another thing. Generally speaking, retro games, because they've been through all the various patches and they've been around for such a long time, for so many years, they've been polished. First by developers, by releasing various patches, and then later on also by the community that so often takes these retro games and continues to provide support for them even after the developers abandon these games. So they are just polished to the point where there's not many bugs and there's not many things that don't work, so a stability of retro games is another plus for retro games. Then they also run easier. That's another plus. So my GPU doesn't have to scream like a demon from hell, trying to run the modern title that, like, even on medium specs is like taking the entirety of my GPU, even though I have a decent GPU, for example. So this is not something that happens with retro games. They run smoothly, perfectly every time I run them, in every situation, because they are old, of course, and today the technology has advanced to so much that they just are snappy like that. And that's another good side of retro games that I appreciate and I love. And so retro games are in a way like I just press a button and they are there. They are ready to play, like a dog that is like immediately wakes up and he's happy to see me and let's play, right? Instead, many modern games are like you press the start button and then like, oh, and the game kind of wakes up. Oh no, don't talk. No, wait, I need to drink my coffee. What day is today? No, wait, just sit down, calm, and let me just collect myself. Where am I? It's like that, right? And so that's another thing about retro games that I like. Now, another advantage of retro games is, generally speaking, now of course there are retro games that don't fit into this category, but generally speaking, there is a certain better gameplay to older games. And then there are different reasons why this is so. Again, this is not a generalization, but this does not apply for every modern and retro game, but maybe generally speaking, it is my impression that older games have a more developed gameplay, because there is this tendency that I noticed in even the modern iteration of old retro games. There is this tendency to simplification that is not necessarily a progress. My guess is that modern AAA game studios, wanting to appeal to a larger audience, simplify the gameplay of the games so that it's easier for more people to play the game. And while this is it's okay for them because they reach a larger audience and they make more money, and that's good for them. I have nothing against that. But then I, and people like me, we don't get the game we wanted to have, that we wanted to play. One such good example is the game Total War Medieval 2, for example, that is, as far as gameplay goes, in my opinion, way more advanced than modern Total War titles. Just the things that one can do in Total War Medieval 2 is much more, and it's much deeper than the things that, again, I can do in the modern Total War games. And this creates a kind of a more sandboxy environment, a more sandboxy game, where the player again can do much more than in modern Total War video games. And that's an example of the simplification of gameplay that to me is not an improvement. To me it's going backward. I would like to have a more complex gameplay, more possibilities, more things that I can do, more strategies that I can apply within the game, instead of having less. But again, I guess modern AAA studios want to appeal to a larger audience, so there's this simplification that again is not something for me, and that's just what I wanted to say, and to voice a part of the audience, part of gamers that are not satisfied with the direction in which some AAA studios are going, which is maximize profit. And so let's continue maybe to the next point. Simplicity. So this is another point of retro games. It's visually they tend to be more simple. This is because of the limitations of the hardware, but there is an advantage to this simplicity in the visuals with this low level of detail and maybe simple polygons and not so many textures. Sometimes that creates this simplicity creates a game that is easy to understand, and it's easy to see at any given moment what's going on the screen. Again, some of modern AAA games in this race to have always more details and always more polygons, what we are seeing on the screen becomes kinda undistinguishable. Too many details kinda make the player not know what is important and what is not. And that is not good. There is some easiness and some relaxation when I see, for example, a racing game that is very simple and I can clearly see where is the car, where is the road, where I need to go, instead of maybe playing a modern title where there's a lot of effects, a lot of flashy signs, a lot of buildings, everything, and then one is not sure where the road is, where I need to go, how much do I have to steer in this particular curve, because I don't see it clearly, because there is too much there. So this simplicity of older games is also something I appreciate in retro games. Then, of course, there is the topic of price. That's another good point to retro games. And price, retro games are very cheap, of course. And it's incredible, actually, how much gaming one can get out of, let's say, just one title. Like, I don't know, for like $9 or even cheaper on some discounts, one can get an older game, like for example Doom 2, and then through all the mods that are there for this game, for Doom 2, one can, I don't know, I can play my whole life all the different mods that, and some of them are so much modified that they are an entire game entirely. I could play my entire life, I think, all the different mods that there are right now out there for Doom 2, and still not go through all the levels and all the various gameplay variations that there are out there. And the community is still building more mods for Doom 2. It's still a vibrant, living community. In fact, there is an entire YouTube channel by the name of Icarus Lives, and his entire channel is based on reviewing Doom 2 mods, and he's making videos for years now based almost exclusively on Doom 2 mods. By the way, I advise checking that channel, it's awesome. Icarus Lives, great channel. And so it's just one game that costs like $9 or less to buy the original game, and then you can download just an enormous amounts of mods for that game. So that's just for that price of $9 and less. The amount of gameplay that one gets is just mind-blowing. So the price is an advantage for sure. And again, in an ideal world, the price should not matter, but we all have to pay our bills and manage our finances, most of us, so that's price is also important, I think, without, pretending that we are all millionaires, which we are not, but it's just how it is. So, and then mods, I wanted also to mention this about retro games. It's not just Doom 2 that has so many mods for it. Total War Medieval 2 is another game that has a ton of great mods. Then Bannerlord, Mountain Blade, Bannerlord is another excellent game that has tons of mods for it. And Stalker Anomaly. Stalker is it's a first-person shooter, another game that has so many mods for it. It's just tons of retro games that one can spend just years exploring these mods and getting lost in them and enjoying them. And so it's a absolute great value for the money. Absolutely, considering all the mods that there are for these various retro games. While the newest games have mods also, but it takes years to develop the mods, so that's that. I wanted to say also, because just to mention it in this video, just for the conversation's sake and to be clear, that I do play modern games. I've been playing Arma 3 recently. That's one I like, and others. I don't exclude modern games or triple A titles at all from my gameplay, and I love them. And it's great to progress in and develop better visuals and more improved games that can run on modern hardware and use the modern hardware. That's all great. But, just making maybe a more balanced situation here. And to most people it is obvious that modern games are good and of quality. I'm just trying to balance the situation and say, hey, retro games are also cool and okay. That's all. And let's see, what else I want to say. So, I always ask myself, why am I playing retro games? Is it because I'm just a kid of the 80s, so it's just what I grew up with? There's always that question. Are retro games really that much good, or is it just something that I'm used to? And so there's always that question, and I think yes, there is that element of I'm used to it. and there is that element of nostalgia, but I think there is also some legitimate quality in the retro games. So maybe in the comments below, if you are somebody who is born in a more recent date, an updated version of a human, maybe in the 90s or 2000s, and you also like maybe retro games, maybe in the comments below you can share your experience and say what did you find interesting in the retro games, so that I feel less bad about myself. And I can think, yes, there is some quality in retro games, and it's not just nostalgia, and I'm not just living in the past, right? And so, what else? I have some bullet points here, just not to get too astray. So, what is bad about retro games? To make this video balanced, also I will say some of the bad things about retro games. One bad thing that I did find out after years and years of playing retro games, in my experience, is that sometimes there are some compatibility issues. That's kind of one of the major downsides of retro gaming. Here and there, it's not so often, but here and there, because these games were made to run on such an ancient hardware, there are some problems with compatibility with modern graphic cards and computers. It doesn't happen with the most famous and most renowned titles from the past, because usually there's a community of people that finds the way to make these games work with patches, but it happens with less known games, sometimes here and there, and it's unfortunate because some jewels from the past and are not playable on modern hardware, and not many people know about these games, but they are kind of sidetracked, and that's unfortunate. But hopefully in the future more and more games will be patched so that they can be played on modern systems too. And another downside of retro games is that some retro games are in fact outdated. That's just how it is, in my opinion, also. Because, let's say, a first-person shooter or a game from the past that was mostly based on just visuals to be appealing to the audience, well, if that certain game has only visuals going for it, and then new games come along that do the same thing, that have more or less the same gameplay, and yet better visuals, well, then automatically that game becomes outdated, unless it has something else apart from the visuals, an interesting world, an interesting story, or something else that still makes the game relevant, even though it's a retro game, of course. And that would be it for this video. Thank you for all your likes. Thank you for all your donations on Patreon. You are making this interaction possible and making of these videos possible. Take care and see you in the next video. Bye bye.